10th, the come up. The come up captures J. Cole at his most unpolished, but also at his most desperate to be heard. At this point, he was an unknown rapper trying to break through in an industry that had little patience for subtlety or introspection. The ambition is clear, but the execution is inconsistent, with production and stylistic choices that sometimes feel borrowed rather than owned. What makes the project important is not how it sounds, but what it represents. Cole was still figuring out how to balance technical skill with identity, and that uncertainty runs through the tape. You hear flashes of focus and discipline, but also moments where he sounds like he's testing different versions of himself. As a debut, it lays the groundwork. As a complete project, it's understandably rough. 9th, Might Delete Later. By the time Might Delete Later dropped, J. Cole was no longer chasing validation. He was operating from a place of comfort, legacy, and self-awareness. That mindset defines the project, for better and worse. Rather than presenting a tightly structured album, this release feels like Cole letting thoughts spill out in real time. The guest list is wide, the tones shift frequently, and the sequencing feels intentionally loose. The most notable moment arrives on 7-Minute Drill, where Cole briefly addresses competitive tensions, reminding listeners that he can still sharpen his edge when he chooses to. Still, the project lacks the emotional or conceptual gravity that defines his strongest work. It feels transitional, like an artist clearing the slate before something bigger. 8th, Cole World, The Sideline Story. Cole's debut album arrived with immense pressure. As Roc Nation's first major rap signee, expectations were sky high, and Cole World reflects that weight. Throughout the album, Cole wrestles with success, insecurity, and the fear of losing himself in the process. Tracks designed for radio success sit alongside deeply personal reflections, creating a push and pull that defines the project. At times, the album feels like two versions of Cole competing for control. Yet that tension is also what makes it honest. This is an artist navigating fame in real time, still learning how to protect his voice while meeting industry demands. It's not fully cohesive, but it's sincere. 7th, The Warm-Up. The warm-up represents a turning point. Cole was no longer experimenting blindly, he was refining his approach. Confidence replaces hesitation, and the writing feels more intentional across the board. This project captures Cole at a moment where belief in his own potential finally outweighs doubt. The themes are clearer, the delivery is sharper, and the hunger feels controlled rather than frantic. While still operating outside the structure of a studio album, The Warm-Up sounds like an artist who knows exactly where he wants to go. It's the project that convinced many listeners he wasn't just talented but inevitable. 6th, Born Sinner. With Born Sinner, Cole leaned into contradiction. The album explores morality, ego, faith, and temptation, often within the same track. At this stage in his career, he was more visible, more scrutinized, and more comfortable exposing internal conflict. Musically, the project feels warmer and more confident than his debut, incorporating melodic influences without losing focus. Lyrically, Cole sounds less concerned with proving himself and more interested in understanding himself. Born Sinner doesn't aim for perfection. It thrives on tension, making it one of his most human projects. 5th, K.O.D. By the time this album arrived, J. Cole had reached a point where commercial success no longer dictated his creative decisions. He was financially secure, critically respected, and largely insulated from industry pressure. That freedom shaped the album's tone. Instead of chasing radio dominance, Cole turned inward and outward at the same time, examining addiction, excess, and self-destruction from a position of awareness. The album reflects an artist watching a culture spiral, while questioning his own proximity to it. Cole places himself both inside the problem and above it, acknowledging temptation while warning against it. The stark production reinforces the unease, creating an atmosphere that feels intentionally uncomfortable. It landed at a moment when escapism dominated the charts, making its confrontational themes feel deliberate and, for some listeners, challenging. Its impact came from that friction. 4th, Friday Night Lights. Friday Night Lights captures J. Cole standing on the edge of breakthrough. At this stage, his industry deal was secured, his reputation was growing, and expectations were beginning to form around who he might become. That tension fuels the project. Every track carries urgency, but also restraint, as if Cole understands that this moment could define everything that follows. The mixtape reflects balance. Ambition exists alongside humility, confidence alongside self-awareness. The sequencing feels intentional, giving the project a narrative flow that many studio albums struggle to achieve. Emotionally, this is Cole sharpening his identity rather than searching for it. That clarity explains why so many listeners still view Friday Night Lights as one of the most complete bodies of work in his entire catalog. Third, For Your Eyes Only. When For Your Eyes Only released, the cultural climate in America was tense, polarized, and emotionally raw. Rather than respond with slogans or surface-level commentary, Cole chose storytelling as his weapon. The album centers on generational consequence, legacy, and the quiet weight of lived experience. At this point in his life, Cole had already achieved the success he once dreamed of, yet the album sounds intentionally grounded. He removed distance between himself and the communities he was speaking about by placing narrative above performance. The project asks listeners to slow down, listen closely, and engage emotionally. Its power comes from patience. It reflects an artist more concerned with meaning than momentum. Second, the off-season. The off-season feels like a recalibration. After years of being positioned as rap's introspective voice, Cole returned with renewed technical focus and competitive sharpness. This album reflects an artist aware of the shifting landscape and confident enough to meet it head-on. At this stage, Cole had nothing left to prove, which made the hunger feel intentional rather than reactive. The bars are tighter, the flows more aggressive, and the energy more direct. Collaborations are used strategically, not as crutches, reinforcing his dominance rather than distracting from it. The off-season reads like a statement of readiness, signaling that Cole remained fully engaged in the craft rather than resting on reputation. First, 2014 Forest Hills Drive. Forest Hills Drive represents the moment when J. Cole aligned ambition, perspective, and execution. At this point in his life, he was reflecting on where he came from while fully understanding where he stood. That clarity defines the album's emotional tone. Rather than embellish his story, Cole stripped it down. The writing feels direct, reflective, and grounded in lived experience. Every track contributes to a larger narrative about growth, regret, gratitude, and self-definition. The album resonated globally because it framed personal memory as shared experience. More than any other project in his catalog, it captured who Cole was at his core and why his voice mattered. With The Fall Off arriving on February 6th, after a decade-long, self-imposed pursuit of making his best work, Cole has framed the album as a personal and artistic reckoning, already setting the tone with Disc 2 Track 2 and signaling that the long-teased final chapter is about legacy, reflection, and finishing the journey on his own terms. If you disagree with this ranking, drop your list in the comments and let's talk it out. And if you want the Fall Off breakdown when it lands, hit subscribe.